Hey, it's Mark, and I hope you're doing well. So, is your brain like mush yet? Are you ready to kind of throw in the towel? Or are you gonna pick this up tomorrow? Sometimes a lot of people will respond to me with, "Talking with you was like drinking from a fire hose," and sometimes that's just it, information overload. But again, you can see how passionate I am about this. You can see how I love to dig into these issues and start creating action steps and action plans for people to really get through their symptoms. So the next group I'm going to talk about when it comes to things I see with ADHD and ADD is vitamin and mineral deficiencies. And what I've learned over the couple of years that I've been a naturopath here now is that until you test, you really don't know. So I know so many of you go on Dr. Google and you check out, deficiency symptoms of X. And it might present with a couple things that you can check off on a box and say, yep, I got those couple things. And maybe it's time for me to start taking some of X. But until you check, you really don't know. So let me describe a couple of things that I see that are very, very commonly missed amongst most of us and some of the underlying causes of why that they're there. So the first thing that I see very commonly on a urine test that I run through the organic acids panel, which I do with almost everybody that has learning issues. If I don't do stool, I usually do urine just to get a snapshot picture of how your body's metabolism is functioning. And one of the things I see very, very commonly on this test is a marker called oxalic acid. And oxalates are actually components found in good for you foods. But unfortunately, so many of us can't break down these oxalates either due to genetic predisposition, so meaning like you don't have the genetic subset to let this process be broken down effectively, or you're just absorbing way too much of it from your food because of leaky gut. So interesting, when the gut barrier is kind of open, these oxalates can slip in there and start doing some of the havoc that they kind of bring to the body. So oxalates are literally like calcium stones. You might read about them from kidney stones or gallbladder stones. I've seen that a ton as well. But oxalates don't necessarily have to present with stones. You can have these deposit in any single tissue. And usually it deposits in inflamed tissue. So I see it very commonly with, neck pain. I see it very commonly with, whiplash reactions or low back pain or hamstring tightness or hip issues or joint issues or whatever kind of dysfunction. Typically we see some oxalates coming out in the urine when we look at the organic acids panel. And oxalates, interestingly, cause massive havoc on vitamin B6. That's another big nutrient that's deficient based on the fact that you might have oxalates. And I also see it with magnesium a ton as well, because the magnesium and calcium need to be kept in balance inside the body. And when we're over accumulating calcium in tissues, a lot of times magnesium gets the boot and you pee it right back out. So it's interesting to see that sometimes this oxalate can create a couple of nutrient deficiencies. It's interesting stuff, right? Again, you don't know you have that until you check. Pyroluria is another very common one as well. So cryptopyrrole is what we test in the urine. And pyrroles are naturally found substances in food, and your body makes them. There's a whole pyrrole pathway inside your biochemistry. Unfortunately, some of us get this issue with pyrrole excess. And what pyrroles do in excess inside of our bodies, they grab zinc and vitamin B6 as well, and they shuttle those outside the body. So zinc is responsible for helping with, creating stomach acid inside your stomach to properly digest and assimilate proteins. It's also involved in immunity. Every single one of your cells requires zinc as a cofactor to do its normal activity. Zinc is one of those wonderful, wonderful minerals that we need to be getting from our day. And unfortunately, the sources that we get, we don't eat a whole lot of. So the best dietary sources of zinc are going to be definitely oysters and shellfish, as well as sometimes some nuts and seeds. So some of us are really good at nuts and seeds, but we're not so good on the oyster side of it. So sometimes a lot of us will require some zinc supplementation. Again, only do that when I have, either, I measured pyroluria and I have it to be addressed, or we have another assay that we look at that shows us zinc deficiency. I'll talk about that in a minute. That's a big two groups that cause issues as well. The third group that I see that causes major vitamin mineral deficiencies is yeast. So yeast is very, very common in our society, partly because of our high sugar-based diet. But yeast actually, when it does its normal metabolism, when yeast eats sugar, it creates an alcohol byproduct that's the same alcohol byproduct as you after you've been hungover. So that same is called acetaldehyde, is the substance in the body that kind of presents with that hungover type symptom. And so many of the kids that I see, if you could kind of tell them what a hangover felt like, they'd say I feel that way kind of every day. So yeast is another big issue that I see. It's a big draw on the nutrient system in our bodies. So we might have to assess that first. Again, the organic acids test covers off a couple of different markers for yeast as well. So I like that test a whole lot. So let's put this nutrients back in perspective. You know, what nutrients does yeast rob the body of? Vitamin B12 is a big one. Again, vitamin B6, vitamin B1, vitamin B2. It definitely starts to affect the liver and its detoxification routes. So the liver loves sulfur-based supports. So sulfur from broccoli, cabbage, and cauliflower are the best ways to put back in this soap, we call it, for the liver. But when the liver's chronically detoxifying a substance like aldehyde, it's really hard to get the nutrients to stay balanced when they're constantly being used. It's like you going in your car and putting your foot to the floor and watching the gas gauge just do this. And when the needle goes down to none and the gas light flicks on, you still push the pedal. We need to start to slow down. And so the burn rate, we call it, of these nutrients definitely goes down. So we kind of need to do some things to take away the problem first. Again, take your foot off the gas pedal before we just start putting more gas back in your car. Good analogy. I like that one. And a couple other things that I see very commonly with nutrient deficiencies are probiotics. So these beneficial floras. Again, beneficial floras happen in the body when there's proper amounts of food. These are the starches that your body's looking for. These are the fermented type foods that we can consume. You know, kombucha, sauerkraut. These types of things are really good. Or you're probiotic orally, which is something that I really like to do because I can tailor deliver what's needed based on your stool test through a probiotic. So I like that aspect a lot. I also see a ton of issues with fatty acids. So fatty acids help you create energy, and the front part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, is loaded with mitochondria. And those mitochondria are like the powerhouse of your cell. You got to think the mitochondria is like the engine in your car. The wheels and how the car looks doesn't really matter. How it performs is what's most important. And the mitochondria that are densely packed in the prefrontal cortex all require fatty acids to do their job the most effective way. So fatty acids are going to come from how your body breaks down essential fats. So these are the things like starting to explore if there's, omega-3 issues, or if there's getting enough fish oil in the day, or are you consuming enough good oils to begin with? These are the things that I like to explore with the dietary aspect. That's why I ask so many questions about your diet when I meet with you clinically. So fatty acids are very important as well. I also see iron is a big issue with a lot of people, especially females that are menstruating. So iron is one of those nutrients that what I'm learning through my research, through a great researcher called Morley Robbins, is if the state of the body is in an anemic state, meaning low iron, the answer sometimes is not to just give iron supplements. That's very, very commonly done, and iron in the body rusts. So we kind of need to get that rusting aspect down first before we start putting back in the iron. And interesting, what Morley's learned is that iron kind of balances itself when it has the right balance of nutrients. And the right nutrients required for iron are magnesium and copper. So copper usually holds zinc in place as well. So again, that zinc copper balance might need to be struck as well. And all these things we can assess through hair. So it's just a simple hair test from the back part of your neck. Just take a little snippet of the back part of the hair, send it back to the lab and say, boys, what's in this hair sample for nutrients perspective? And we can actually see the minerals inside your hair and see the ratios and balance points that the body's striking inside your system. And hopefully we can work to correct those with the proper means. Pretty cool stuff, right? I also see a huge deficiency on the organic acids test, the urine test, in a product that's known to be very, very well with detoxification, and that's called glutathione. So glutathione is the body's master antioxidant. It is the shuttling system to get crap out of your body and let it process normally. It's the thing that quenches fires. It's the thing that blankets inflammation. It's the thing that helps cells from breaking down their cell walls. Glutathione is critical. How your body makes glutathione, when you provide the proper amino acids to the body and the proper amounts of sulfur from your food, your body will naturally assemble glutathione on its own. Sometimes we don't have to come in behind and give glutathione in a supplementation or an injection. But in some cases that might be necessary depending on where you are. So again, if we can clean up the detoxification route first, that sometimes is the most important step to get that nutrient to go back to balance itself. And the last one that I see very, very commonly is amino acid deficiencies. People just simply not getting enough raw ingredients, the building blocks of life, to kind of make themselves feel good. So amino acids come from proteins. Proteins, number one, you got to be eating good quality proteins. That's number one. Number two, we have to be digesting those good proteins effectively. So again, if you're having heartburn or regurgitations, or you're bloated or gassy and not pulling in those issues as you should, there's no real sense to kind of come behind and start giving amino acid supplements. You want to address the problem. And that problem comes back to your stool test. What's in your stool that's causing that protein not to digest? So as you can see, like I said to so many people when I see them clinically, there's layers to the onion. Sometimes there's 5 layers, sometimes there's 10 layers. Every single person is very different. But I think it's very important to look at the underlying strategies and start building up rather than taking down. That's the aspect that I like to do. Get to the root of what's going on, provide the right lifestyle supports along the way, and hopefully that starts to resolve some of your symptoms. So nutrient deficiencies, it's not just as simple as saying you're deficient in zinc, here, go take zinc. Again, you want to explore, are you high in oxalates? Are you have polyuria? Are you having proper stomach acid? These are the things you want to explore. It's not just as simple as, saying, take this multivitamin, you'll feel better. The multivitamin will provide you with a whole bunch of different nutrients, but it's not fixing any problems. So that's the name of the game. Fix the problem so the body doesn't need these supports. That's the takeaway. So nutrient deficiencies are huge, and they can present with a ton of psychological, neurological, and behavioral issues. But again, they're deficient because of a problem. So again, we have to kind of get to the root of that and try to find what that is, which is why I love what I do. So I'm going to do a wrap-up video for you here now, kind of come through some of the things that I talked about, put it all in perspective for you, and hopefully you learned a ton about some of the underlying potentials here about ADD and ADHD.